Hello, and welcome back to the Developer Show. I'm Fatima, and we have a very special guest returning to the show today, Kelsey Hightower. So, Kelsey, last time we talked about like hype versus the reality of AI. And today I want to go a little bit deeper because at GitLab, we just released the GitLab Duo Agent Platform to general availability. So I thought this was another great opportunity to have you come back and talk about like what AI actually solves for versus like what the market hype promises. So welcome back to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Round two.
Yeah. So one of the things that has changed since the last time we chatted is that people are using a lot more AI agents. And so, for example, one of the sort of viral tweets that went out a few days ago was from Andrej Karpathy, who is co-founder of OpenAI and the person who sort of coined vibe coding. And he was saying that he used to manually write 80% of his code, and now 80% of it is written by AI agents. And he's mostly programming in English and sort of supervising the agents to work. We feel like this is a real shift in the way that people work with agents and work with AI in general. And we've talked with you previously about like training your own model and making sure that you're sort of set up for success. But how are you feeling about that now? And like, what does this mean for people who are just starting to use these tools and aren't necessarily like that ahead of the curve?
I mean, I think we got to be clear. A lot of us that are like in retirement, post-production code writing, when we say we're just using these tools to just create apps, we're not talking about production apps with observability, security stuff and controls, permissions and schemes. We're talking literally about, just what we would call like typically prototypes and throwaways, right?
Right.
And can they build full applications? Sure. I was working with a friend the other day. He was just generating all this code. He's like, you notice something, Kelsey? This thing is not adding any logging, any metrics, any observability, any permission checks. So by default, these things don't even think about those things.
Yeah.
And so I think we just got to be very clear that these things are hyper powerful. So I don't want to downplay it. But a
Right.
lot of the stuff that we're talking about, and a lot of stuff that I think a lot of the people that use tools like GitLab do every day, we're not building greenfield applications all day long. If that was the case, I think software engineering would be a totally different field. What I think people are doing these days is, you know, I was going through the demo for the particular thing that you all launched. It really does start with like some requirements, talking to the customer. There's going to be an issue in GitLab that you're going to track and get consensus on as a team. Once you have that consensus, then I think what we're seeing, which I think a lot of people are excited about, is taking your issues, your pull requests, all of those things are becoming context to these particular models. And so now instead of generating greenfield applications, I think people are excited about saying, hey, just do this specific thing that the team has already agreed on and we've already given context for. So I do think that's the net improvement that we're going from code by yourself in your IDE to let's just add context from the workflows that we already have. That's the interesting piece.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think we hear that from a lot of our customers and users as well, is that like it's great that we can generate all of this code now, but how are we going to deal with the validation of it and the reviewing of it and the making sure that it fits the guardrails of the organization? And we hope that with our security agent and with some of the ways that we set up compliance on the platform, we're able to sort of provide that scaffolding. But I really think what you're saying is key is that like there is a group that can play and build really cool things and really quickly, but in those sort of real world applications there's a lot more that you have to do that maybe the agents aren't quite up to yet. But we can sort of
The
provision them.
most impressive thing that any of these agents will ever do to blow me away,
Yeah.
they will say, you shouldn't generate any code right now because it already exists over here.
Yeah.
Like if an agent does that, then I'm like, now it's thinking,
Yeah.
right? If you have something that's just outputting things because you asked for it, now we're in like the magic genie situation, right? People find the genie and get three wishes, but they haven't thought about those three wishes.
Yeah.
And most of the movies that we've seen around getting those three wishes, you end up in trouble around wish number two. So
Yeah.
I think what we're really getting towards is like having that dialed in context and generating as little code as possible to fix only the issue and nothing more. That's when I think that's the maturity curve that we're on. So look, I'm actually pretty happy now that the platforms are getting in on the action. A lot of people thought this was going to be people's IDEs reaching out over MCP and that was going to be the end of it.
Hmm.
Just like all other APIs and other extractions, the core thing being automated has to have some core functionality. So it's kind of good to see this release.
Awesome. Thank you. We're always excited to see excitement about the release. Um, as always, whenever we have you on the show, we go and we read through all of your commentary on the internet.
Okay.
This is a thing my team and I do. We're like, he said this. He said this about Kubernetes. He said this about agents. And so one of the things that you posted was, I wish we had the same level of docs for real intelligence that we now have for artificial intelligence. And I wanted to sort of expand on that because I think it's sort of related to this platform approach where you have wikis and readmes and documentation.
Yeah, I think the fatal mistake that we've all made, and I'm just going to try to be very clear for people.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm learning a new programming language. I'm learning a programming language called Zig. It's a really lightweight C-like language. And I went to the documentation, and there is no real-world examples. There's a bunch of tests. There's a bunch of snippets. There's a bunch of hints, almost as if they want me to go on a murder mystery. I'm
With an
trying.
AI.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. Like what we, as a human, what I would like to see is like, hey, you would like to write an app. Here is the entire hello world, comments and all the initial import statements. What we tend to do for humans is like, oh, we don't want to repeat ourselves.
Yeah.
Let's just assume people have been writing in this language for 15 years and we're just going to give them hints. And then we have to click around to Stack Overflow, get this blog. That blog may be updated or not. Even the official docs are just not where they need to be. And so we just neglected those schemes because over the last maybe 10, 15 years, we just brute forced it. Watch
Yeah.
5 videos, go to Stack Overflow, copy and paste. Oh,
something.
hope it works.
Yeah.
And so we never got around to writing really, really good documentation.
Yeah.
But when you get to the AI world or agentic AI or LLMs, they need documentation if you want anything useful for them. It's so amazing to me that we were arguing about this decades ago. Where's the docs? We don't have any good docs. We haven't written anything down. It's like, just you all figure it out. And then people are like, why are you all not productive?
Right.
If you bring in an LLM and you have no docs, no context, no spec, it's going to do nothing. Just like real humans won't be able to do very much if you don't have any context for them. And so this is where I was like, look, I'm glad people are very excited about doing all of this for the artificial intelligence. But if we would have been doing this for 20 years for the real intelligence, think how productive people would have been if we would have just had great documentation when we go to one website versus bouncing around 25 different websites. So that's what I mean by that. It's a little tongue in cheek. And I just hope that people do realize that the computers need the docs, but so do the humans.
Yeah. I'm definitely guilty of this. Admittedly, the other day I have a demo project that another team is taking on, and they were like, "Oh, can you walk me through the project and show me the things?" And I was thinking, and I didn't say it, but I'll share this on live stream. I was thinking like, or you could just ask Duo about it, like, and I remember like it's easy to fall into I don't necessarily want to call it a trap, but it is easy to fall into the pattern of like the LLM can figure it out for you. Whereas, like, there is knowledge that I have about this project that I could put down in the README with, like, here's how I suggest playing around with this project, or here are 3 or 4 use cases that you might find interesting. But for some reason, I'm a little bit spoiled by it generating things and not putting in some of that work. So, like, yeah, confessional from me, but like,
Fatima,
you reminded me of
here's
that.
where I think the actual opportunity is. So I think the thing a lot of people are scared about all these technologies
Yeah.
is like, hey, this thing's just going to replace me. It's going to replace my job. And the questions we've been getting quite a bit have been, so what do I do in this new world?
Yeah.
In your particular use case, this one where you have all this domain knowledge, you built this thing, you know why you built it, you know why you built it the way you built it. That's the thing that LLM doesn't know at all.
Yeah.
And it can guess, it can generate some assumptions and people just run with it. And then that becomes the truth. But I think what a person like you can do is like, you know what, I am busy. I'm not saying you're not busy. I know you got a recent promotion, so you're probably busier than
Thank
you were before. But I can imagine you using this tooling to say, you know what, let me at least have this thing generate the rough draft. And then let me, the domain expert, the authority on this, clean this up, make sure that it has all the things that I need, and then commit that back to the knowledge base. So that way, when people do go use Duo, and I think Duo can still be used even if you've written the best documentation possible, because it just gives people this universal search engine, this universal query engine. And so I think having you kind of tighten it up a little bit, giving it that authoritative context, I think that's just like a really great way to pair expertise with tooling that makes it easier to disseminate.
Yeah, I really love that, sort of putting the domain expert back into the flow, where it may seem more mainstream to not do that, but I really love that advice. Thank you. Speaking of human expertise, we do have some humans from GitLab that I want to bring into this conversation. So if we can welcome Darva Satcher, our Director of Enterprise AI and Customer Outcomes, and Ebru Engwall, our Senior Solution Architect. Excited to have you both back on the show. I was thinking this is like my all-stars episode of like all the people that are really popular.
Welcome, everybody.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Darva, do you want to go for it? Maybe like we can start with quick intros.
Sure. My name is Darva Satcher. I'm the Director of Enterprise AI and Customer Outcomes. Previously, I worked in engineering for the Create stage, and I helped deliver some of the first generation GitLab AI features, code suggestions, code generation. I've been in industry for over 25 years, and I'm really excited to talk with you all today on the show.
I'm super pumped. Like I feel like I'm just like fangirling.
Me too.
Yeah, I know. I'm Ebru Engwall. I'm solution architect here at GitLab. I represent basically the go-to-market side, and I work with enterprise customers list basically. And before GitLab, I was working on blockchain infrastructure, worked with the DevOps communities, and I founded an AI company. And before all that, I was a principal software engineer at Oracle, built data pipelines. And one day I realized that I was a super extrovert and I have to talk to people 24/7. So now I'm over here. I'm super excited to be here. And because like I'm, with two legends and including you, Fatma. And thanks so much for having me back.
Always a pleasure to have you. So I wanted to get the panel together. And one of the questions that we get every single month at every single video is sort of like, when AI is writing the code, what skills actually matter? And I know we've gone over this from different angles, but I thought this would be a unique discussion. And so, Kelsey, I can kick that off to you, and then we'll sort of bounce the question around.
I mean, you got to know what it's supposed to be, I think, to a degree. Like if you go to the store, nothing had a label on it, and you're just like buying mystery boxes, but you know you're supposed to make spaghetti, so there's no labels. It's on you to open each box and be like, yeah, that's spaghetti. But if you've never seen spaghetti before, you're going to be bringing home tuna. Your wife's like, why'd you bring tuna? It's like, I don't know. It's like all the boxes look the same. So I think when people are just hitting the generate button and you don't know how to program, or you've never seen what good looks like, you've never seen your company's internal style guide, when you issue that pull request, this is why I think we're seeing a little bit of backlash in the open source community where they're updating the contributions guide saying, hey, listen, if you're just going to vibe code these pull requests and you haven't looked at it, you haven't looked at our style guide, you're just tossing stuff over the fence, we're going to put as much effort in reviewing that code as you put into writing it. And they're just closing those pull requests. So I think the skills that are actually important here is you are still the domain expert. You're still responsible for the thing that you contribute. So kind of use these tools as like a superpower versus like a substitute for your knowledge, right? So I think it's one of these things where you're still important, you're the biggest part of the equation, but maybe we can get part of the tedious stuff, get that out of the way, and let these tools really push our ideas forward at a much quicker pace.
Ebru, I know you have some thoughts about like how you need to know software and know how to use the tools, know that it is spaghetti and what spaghetti looks like, and how that is still really important. So if you want to expand on that.
Oh yeah, I think I told about this because like I started seeing a different pattern. So I'm talking to customers every day, right? And I feel like how I interacted with customers are kind of changed in the last couple of years. I used to get questions like, oh, how do I configure this feature? Or what's the best practice? And now like I get questions and they are very hard. And because like when someone reaches out to me, right, like I already assume that they already went through like 3 different AI models. They tested with the Duo Agent Platform. And if they're coming to me, they're pinging me, they're not looking for answers that they can find with AI. They want to know what I'm seeing with other customers, what's actually working in the wild, and what's engineering and product like Darva and everybody is doing. And then they are not in the public or docs. Like it's actually, they're asking for my expertise and creative thinking many of the time, right? And same thing is internally. I don't go to bother engineers as much anymore because like I can go ask Duo, hey, where's the API? What is the data that I can check? Like how I can test it out. So I can ask like simple questions. And then when I go to them, I'm like, oh my God, I really need your help, right? I really need your expertise. So I think to connect to like what we were talking about, like the code generation, vibe coding and everything else, right? And I think when I was writing full-time code, I don't write it anymore much, like production
I've
code.
seen your demos.
But so I think what I was doing is like the spec time for me was in researching was taking a lot more time than actually writing the code, like because my manager was like, write all the docs before you write the code. And then I'm not even talking about the rest of the SDLC. So now we're just like you guys were saying, we are seeing like AI, all these like generated code and everything else. But like it started causing these like traffic jams, right, for the rest of the SDLC, because somebody needs to do the code review. Like somebody needs to figure out the security vulnerabilities. And now there's like additional skills that is needed. Like somebody needs to figure out where to put AI, what bottlenecks that AI can solve and cannot, and which bottlenecks to prioritize, like how to get actual impact and velocity instead of just like causing more issues to engineers, right? Which like what we were just talking about, right? If you don't know your system, then you're just solving the wrong problem, or what problem are you solving, right? So that's my perspective.
Yeah, I remember one time we had you doing a demo on the show, and you pulled up your prompts, and it was like 7 pages and 4 phases, and each prompt was like so deep. And I remember thinking like, is that how I'm supposed to prompt engineer? Like because it was basically like a technical spec that you had broken up into steps. And so as you were talking about the different bottlenecks and the specs, I was like admiring back when you had showed me your prompts, and I'm sure they've improved since then because that was
Yeah,
several months ago.
absolutely. So much context engineering. There's context pollution, context compaction. Like Darva can probably, and Kelsey talk more about that, but definitely it's changed so much. And I also told you like, because AI was like, oh, you don't need this API. Let me mock everything down. And then they just like wiped out my entire code while I was just doing some small testing. So these things happen, right? You just got to learn how to instruct AI better, I think.
Yeah. Darva, what are you finding organizations that are trying to build their teams to use more AI in a more efficient way? Like, what are the skills that they are needing to invest more in?
So I'll say the skills have been evolving over time because the AI features have been evolving over time. So I'm going to start with our values. I'm going to coach the skills in our values, which are collaboration, results, efficiency, diversity, inclusion, and belonging, iteration, and transparency. So Duo Chat, the original classic version, it helps you think. Agentic Chat helps you work, and flows help you execute at scale. So for Duo Chat, the skills that we're looking for were, this is several months ago, transparency, ask really good questions, right? Can you explain what this function is doing? We slowly evolved to Agentic Chat, right? Helping you work. So here you're collaborating and you're iterating with an agent. So you might ask a question. Imagine you have a failing test case across a few files. Developer asks, find these test cases and solve them, explain why it broke. It's actioning, it's autonomous. You go back and forth. You have to have a really good judgment on whether or not the solution they propose is accurate. And then with flows, you need to know what you want beforehand. You need to be very clear with your requirements because you're not going to have a lot of opportunity to engage. So you might say, I want to add logging to these files. Have a really good understanding of what you want, which files you want logging in, and what the plan should look like so that you can review and approve the plan. So that's, I see the evolution of features impacts the evolution of skills.
Yeah, that's really great. I also, if Ebru or Kelsey, you want to jump in, I have a tendency of ping-ponging the questions around, but feel free to like comment.
Well, the one big worry I have about all of this, like I remember my first contribution to the Go programming language, and I was adding basic auth to the standard library. So the standard library, which I think a lot of people should remind themselves of, we should not be generating the same blocks of code 1 million times across the world. That is insane. That is inefficient. If we find a good solution, we do have the concept of software libraries and reuse. So even if you're generating code, hopefully you're generating from software libraries. So maybe some person somewhere will just take the time to generate every possible permutation of a library in the world. So we can actually just pull from libraries instead of generating the same blocks of code all the time. But I think one thing that's really important here is that when I did that contribution, I took a very naive algorithm to adding basic auth, right? A HTTP request came in. I looked for the username and password. I got it out of the header. And what I was doing though was I was allocating so much on the stack or the heap, and I was causing so much memory usage for a simple HTTP request. And Rob Pike, a legend of his own, one of the fathers of Unicode, old school Unix, and one of the creators of Golang, luckily, he gave me my code review. The code looked beautiful. I checked it 10 times. It had unit tests, everything, but he's like, you're allocating on the stack. And if you just look at the code, you wouldn't understand that unless you understood how memory layout works, how Go's garbage collector works. You would have to know all of that to be able to make that kind of feedback. And so I think a lot of people are finding themselves in a situation, they don't even know what to ask it to do. They don't even know to say, hey, when you implement this feature, limit the allocations on the stack, I prefer the heap. Or don't allocate at all, use a byte array instead of working with strings. Like, that's something you have to know from experience in order to even prompt it that way. And the last thing I'll say here is, at some point, does the prompt become more work than the implementation? And so I think a lot of seasoned professionals who are having a little reluctancy of using these tools, some people that have been doing this for as long as the people on this call have been doing it, you're like, yo, I can write this in like 10 lines. Like, I know exactly what to do. Function call, I have it based on muscle memory. And so those people are like, I'm going to have to write, 2 paragraphs of prompts, or I can compress it down to this one piece of syntax that I've learned over the years. So I think we just got to make sure we understand that your only option isn't just to prompt. It's like a thing that you can prompt when you need it. Or maybe you're familiar with a function call because you're in a new piece of code base. You can go into that mode like, hey, what does that do? Okay, don't do anything else. I got it from here. So just want to keep those things in mind for people.
I like to piggyback off of that.
Yeah.
I definitely agree that sometimes you're going to start off slow. I was practicing learning Mandarin some years ago, and to say hello, how's the weather in Mandarin was going to take me a little time. I might have to review my notes or look at some videos. But once I learned how to say hello, how's the weather, it was easy. So I think in the beginning, all of us are going to go slow before we can go fast. Also, maybe I don't know the right, I don't want to get into Mandarin, but we just have to learn the tool, and AI literacy is pretty important before you can really be effective.
So are you making my point that if you learn the syntax, you can go fast and you won't need it, or learn the prompt and you won't need the syntax?
I'm saying understand how to use AI to decide when you should use it and when you shouldn't, but don't stop using it because you think you're going too slow early on. So I'm really responding.
So what I hear is you got to learn both and decide which one is better.
Yes, agreed.
We do have a question about learning in the chat from Shivam. My organization is opting GCP infrastructure and guidance us for GitLab learnings for deployments. Any tips or learning tricks for a beginner to GitLab? I think I can pop this to Darva and then Ebru. Thank you, Shivam, for the question.
So I would say, I think AI is a great place to learn, right? So I would go to Duo and ask questions. Something I often do is I'll just give it a broad topic and say, create a micro-learning course for me. And then I'll say, what questions should I ask? And then I might say, how is this used? And then I would say, what are some lessons learned or some common challenges that people face with it? So I would really learn how to ask really good questions to learn from AI.
Yep. And also, like, we have a lot of workshops as well. I think there's so many like advanced CI/CD workshops. Like, we are always like throwing this out there, and you can join that. There's like certifications, there are trainings that you can actually, especially it's like GCP. I'm not sure if it's like a specific to GCP, but there's a lot of like information out there that you can use. But I plus one to what Darva was saying, like there's a lot of like you can learn from Duo because it has the context of the entire GitLab documentation and the code base and everything. So it helps you out.
Another thing I would add is, I was talking to a college student about this. Ask it to help you work on a sample project.
Mm.
right? Because a lot of times we learn by doing, and it can set up a sample project, give you requirements and all of that. So the key thing is to try to figure out how to sometimes self-serve some of this learning when people who know how to do it aren't available.
I have a specific example for this. With GCP, one thing I always run into is setting up review apps on a merge request to sort of bring up that little environment on the merge request that simulates live, and so you can sort of test what's in your code, and you can set up the review app to deploy on GCP. And it is, to me, like a concise experiment where normally I would go to this one coworker and be like, "Can you set up review apps? Can you set up review apps?" And he was out on vacation once, and I was like, today's the day that I need to learn how to do this. And I can't say that I fully know how to do all of it yet, but it was sort of an experiment that is contained enough and small enough, to Darva's point, where you can sort of validate whether or not you're doing it right and validate whether or not you've learned it. And I think that's really valuable. So you can use Duo to do it, or use Planner Agent to sort of plan your steps out. But there's also an element of like judging whether or not, like, did I do this correctly? There's a finite outcome. Whereas a lot of times when you're just vibe coding a thing, there's no real finite outcome if you haven't planned what it is. So yeah.
I'm gonna
thank
add
you
one
for
more
the-
thing here. I noticed in this question is like you may be a beginner to GitLab, but you may have a lot of experience in something
Mm.
else. And I think one thing that I like to do is take the thing that you already know how to do in the other tool and then learn enough of the new tool to do what you were able to do before. That way, you know what spaghetti looks like. And so you know where to stop versus going down a bunch of unrelated rabbit holes. And I think it's the fastest way to get confidence. So your experience is still valuable. Your actual model you have in your brain is still valuable. And so now you
Mm.
can start to ask very pointed questions. And now you have a goal to say, hey, I finally know how to do what I know how to do fundamentally in the other tool, but now in GitLab. So, maybe leverage that head start called experience that we've built up over the years.
I really love that. So the second sort of topic that I've had, and I think my audience has heard me reference this study quite a bit already, but there was an MIT research report that 95% of enterprise AI pilots were failing to deliver value. It was quite a big failure rate. I think it took those of us who weren't maybe thinking about these things in non-market hype ways, like, by surprise. And then I'm going to ask Ebru first. I think you're really close to the quick pulse of building AI tools and delivering demos to our customers. And where do you see the disconnect, and why some of those pilots may be failing?
Yeah. Thanks for asking to me first.
I'm on a shuffle.
So, yay, no, I love it. No, I appreciate it. Like, I think I'm glad that I get to answer this first, because I think when I joined GitLab last year, and then seeing our solution architect team, how they do pilots, it's not only AI but in general, like, because we have such a big like platform, right? Like, there's so much going on. So when I saw them, like, how structure and processes, and I was like super impressed. But I want to give you a fun story, like, to contrast, and then I want to come to what's good. So when I first started my career, like I told you, like, I was a data engineer. I learned databases, I learned Hadoop, I learned like business intelligence. Actually, that brought me to United States as an opportunity. So I'm not mad about that at all. But I remember when I first joined, like, I was going to all these like conferences, and every conference I went, every session started with 3 V's: velocity, volume, variety. Everybody was like talking about same things all over again, right? And we were just super, super excited. And I remember one of the engineers that I work with, like, spin out some machines, load data, ran a query. It came back in like 30 seconds. We were super pumped in the meeting room. And I asked, like, amazing, how much data did you put? And I can put that data in an Excel sheet, run a pivot table in milliseconds. So I think I'm seeing like similar things with the failures with the AI pilots. Maybe like sometimes I get super excited, right? AI agents, I want to build this agent and that agent and this flow. Oh my God. And then my managers come back and say, like, hold on for a second. Why does the customer actually need AI over here, right? So the reality is, like, I'm learning, everybody's learning, we're all figuring things out together. And I think I always remind myself two things that one of my advisors told me, like, when I was a co-founder: One of them is from Ted Lasso. It is be a goldfish, because goldfish has 5-second memory and they're happiest animal. And then they just say like, hey, if you fail, learn from your mistake and move on, right? And then the second one is like actually the most important piece is the narrow the scope and increase the velocity, which is actually super, super critical doing these like AI pilots, because I'm working with developer experience teams and they have their own customers, which is like thousands of developers, right? So instead of going out all at once, right, it is like you start with a smaller scope.
Mhm.
You just basically say that like, hey, what are the pain points that you're solving? Maybe just focus on one pain at a time.
Yeah.
And why would customer even want to use AI over here? What are, when prepare best practices for the rest of the community, right? The rest of the developers, prompt examples, and see what works, see what drives like the impact, and make sure that somebody is driving adoption and giving feedback. What are your success metrics? Like you just think about all of that. Even I'm not even talking about like hardware requirements and everything, right? That comes with it. And if you don't, and you give AI to these brilliant minds, they expect perfection right away, right? They expect perfection with their giant monorepos without using right tools like knowledge graphs, right? They expect, they have high expectation, or everything has to work perfectly without using like custom instructions properly. So narrow the scope, increase velocity, focus on the right problem, and I think in the right solutions. I think that will just fix a lot of the problems with the pilots.
All right, I can go next. I thought that was
Sure.
amazing. So the one thing I will say is I love starting with customer pain points. I would target those KPIs. They have KPIs that they've been tracking for years. And if you can say, I can move this KPI in the direction you want it to go in, if you use this specific agent or flow for this specific use case. So make it, like you said, narrow, right? And then from there, you set the expectations at the beginning of the pilot. This is what we're going to do. This is the metric we're going to move. And it may or may not move the needle. And if it does not, we'll tweak it. We'll make some changes. And if it still does not, we'll abandon it. We'll move on, right? So I think that it's important to be transparent and upfront, time box it, maybe a few weeks, 2-3 weeks, whatever. We were pretty successful doing that at GitLab. We had a duo code review, and we wanted duo code review to run immediately after you submitted your merge request. Well, we had to test this out. So we didn't want to just throw it out there to everyone. And this is the early days before it was GA, early days. So we asked for volunteers. So we had people who were ready, and we set the expectations. We watched the metrics. And once it got to the point where the quality was much better, we were ready to scale it out to the organization for dog fooding. And then we were able to scale it out into the product, right? But there were like metrics that we were watching. And when things weren't quite right, we would tweak something. So to me, it's part of like how we build software at GitLab. That's it.
I'm chewing on this one because a lot of the companies, when we say enterprises specifically, we're talking enterprises.
Mhm.
The top 50-ish enterprises have been in S&P for 70 years straight. All 70 years they've been in there. So if you've been in business for 70 years and you're in the S&P 500, that means you make money with things in production. These are real systems that make real money. So that means you have a solution to most of the things that you have to do. There's a bunch of stuff you want to do, but all the stuff you actually have to do is being done. Now, it could be done by brute force. A bad process is a bad process. I don't care if you rub a bash script on it. I don't care if you rub AI on it. You just have a faster implementation of a bad process. And what a lot of people are finding out is like, oh, we got this new tool. I'm not going to reevaluate the process because we know how automation works. You stop what you're doing. And what I like to do is I just review it manually. Hey, slow down, stop, don't do nothing. Do we even need all of these steps? You go back there and say, hey, this step, we put it in 1982 because of this reason. This step was when we was using dial-up modems. Take all that out. Because here's what's the thing. If you ask the AI to optimize that, it doesn't know this context. Now you could try to give it, hey, in a world where there are no more dial-up modems, try to figure out what part of this you don't need anymore. That takes a long time to express, but I think the act of expressing that allows you to evaluate the steps, clean that part up. But then the hard work is, how do you prune it? How do you clean that up? Someone's probably got to do some code. Someone's probably got to revisit those pipelines. And I think that's where the tools can help. But I think this is why these things are failing, is because people think this is magic. People aren't telling people like the full story here. You actually have to do a little bit of work before you just go automate things. And that part where you have to think, revisit, unplug machines that don't need to be online anymore if you really want to see those cost savings. And that's the part that the AI can't solve for you. Not yet. That's not what it does. But it does, though, is when you do understand what you want, when you do have a good process, we now have new tools to turn that good process into an agent, into a new pipeline, to a snippet that's reusable by other parts of the organization with a much friendlier interface so it can be adopted by everyone else. You don't have to go build another Skunkworks Ruby on Rails app so people can launch a VM. No, you have this kind of universal Swiss Army knife now, but you still got to have a good process that this thing can hook into. So I think that's probably why a lot of people are getting that bad taste in their mouth in the initial projects, but they're going to learn. I think the feedback loop here is like, okay, this isn't magic. We have to prepare ourselves, but once we do, now we can make better use of the tool. And I think we're going to find ourselves in an okay place down the road.
So there's a comment that we want to shout out in the chat. Can we pull it up? Building to value is critical, and I think a lot of that has been lost in the hype just because so many orgs are excited about the possibilities, but we totally need to ground our solutions in benefit and value. It's something I advocate for in my org today.
100%. Whoever posted this, I believe it was Jen. 100%.
I believe it was Jen, yeah. Thank you, Jen. And then it looks like we have a lot of agreement. I can't see the names of private LinkedIn users in the chat. So somebody is agreeing with that perspective. And I think also agreeing with what you were just saying, Kelsey, which is you need to be the one to bring in that context. And you know, if you don't know it's spaghetti and you don't know that there were once dial-up modems, it's hard to be able to then prompt the AI to help you with that. Looking at time, I think we're going to move into our last topic, which is I wanted to dive a little bit more into the agent platform GA last week and talk a little bit about the highlights of the stuff that we released. And then maybe we can get Kelsey's thoughts on some of those as well. Ebru, do you want to kick us off with the security analyst agent? I know that that is one of your favorites in terms of helping you get things done.
Actually, code review is my favorite.
Okay. Oh, bro, you want me to do that cue again?
Code review is my favorite, and then the rest is like, yeah, Darva, thank you. Like, I think it is. I mean, seriously, like my entire engineering, like that is a big blocker, right? Like for everyone. Like I was talking about this soup analogy. I love analogy. Sorry about that, people, but so the soup analogy is like you're a Michelin star chef at a French laundry, right? Like you're doing the steak making steaks and you're working on it. And then soup chef comes in and like, hey, taste this. And now you just stop and you focus on the soup. And then there's a bug in the soup. It is cold, so not salty. And then like you just like send it back. And by the time that soup chef comes back, then you're on vacation and nobody else to review the code. And then by the time you come back to review the soup, right? Then it's summertime. It's summertime. It's not relevant anymore. So I think what we are seeing is like very similar. I work with some customers and enterprises that they thought that pipeline execution and everything that was actually one of the biggest bottlenecks that can be solved with AI. But later on, when they ask everyone, code review was unanimously was at the top. Because it's like, it's not minutes, it's not hours, it's like days of like sitting code there, not utilized properly, right? So think that now with the code review, what you can do that initial run that is important for your patterns, important for like your organizational like nitpicking, naming conventions, and because it was happening all the time, right? So AI handles the initial review. There's not a lot of like friction between the developers. So now like teams can actually don't think code review as a like, oh my gosh, I need to go and check what is there again and again. What they do is like they bring actually like more trust, because they know like it's okay. The initial review run. Now I can go and actually tell, like just like Kelsey was saying earlier about the code review, right? Now I can bring my knowledge. Hey, that is going to cause you performance issues in the past. Like I know it from that pattern. I think you should use this one and then that one, right? You have better collaboration. That's what I feel like. But I want to let maybe Darva tell more, but I would love to talk about like security agents, and like I love the new GA solutions that come in. It's great for my customers.
So I would say my favorite is the AI catalog. And let me explain why. The AI catalog allows engineers to innovate and allows engineering leaders to govern. So the AI catalog is a library of agents and flows that you can add, edit, and remove. Fantastic. I gave an example earlier of some of our teams are in experimental phase. And I know we had one product manager that experimented with creating a planner agent. So imagine you're in an organization and you don't want to immediately scale that planner agent out to everyone, but you want that individual to be able to experiment. So they can experiment privately with the AI catalog. And then when the organization is ready to make it public across their organization to scale, they can control that. So it gives us both empowers the engineer to innovate and the organization to control and pin like maybe the recent version. So I really love that. Code review is fantastic, but I love the ability to manage a library of agents and flows.
I completely agree with you on that, because like a lot of times when I talk to customers and I'm like, they were just like, I don't want engineers to go ahead and like use like unofficial MCP servers and drop a production database. You know, they want to have some kind of control which agent is running where. And I think it's one of the concerns, like just like executives yourself. So totally get it.
We want to give them the space to experiment and learn, right? And now they can. So that's why I like it. But Kelsey, I'm interested in your thoughts on all of what we've discussed.
Look, as an outsider, like I can, if I were to put myself in the customer's shoes, like I'm working at a company, remember, I have a whole bunch of things on my plate: Oracle, Postgres, the cloud, PagerDuty, and my on call this week. So no one wants to focus in on one single product. So now you're asking yourself, what does this product allow me to do that I couldn't do before, right? Because there's so many things on your plate. And so when I look at a platform like this, before, you would have to try to find some APIs to glue together your own workflow, right? So if you, for example, the golden path is the classic one, right? When a new person wants to create a new project, you call the right GitLab APIs, you create a repository, you put a Hello World app in there, and you were praying that you will give me APIs to do this. And we got APIs for some of it. We screen scraped the rest of it. Like we brute forced a lot of our workflows across these platforms. And so now what we're seeing is that companies like GitLab are opening up the API surface, AKA agents, this all-encompassing LLM that isn't bound by these 5 or 6 endpoints, right? You always give me users and permissions, but really what I want is a thing called workflow. And we've never had a workflow API ever. It's been a thing where you have to just glue it together yourself. So I watched the demo. I watched all 50 minutes of it. I actually clicked through the documentation. And the thing that jumps out to me is that there's a new API called workflows. You all call it agent. The industry calls it AI. It's a workflow SDK that's built into the platform finally. And so if you're new to GitLab, if you're thinking about how this is going to work when you have 100 other things to think about, there's times in your career or even this project that you're working on where you just stop for a moment, you go clean up all the pipelines. Sometimes you stop for a moment, you go clean up all the issue types to make sure only the ones we use are actually there, and you get everything in order. And then you go write some docs to tell people, don't create more issues because these are all the ones we need. Now what you can do is take all that context. You can take your mental model. So the title of this whole thing was Train Your Own Brain. You've been doing that every time you come to work. Once you do train your own brain, you have this mental model. Where do you put it? For a long time, that has been like a bash script or some Python snippet. Now, what they're doing with these agents, they're saying, take your mental model and express it through an agent and add it to the catalog. And so if you were to think about it that way, we're not talking about if, else, then do this. Those are very rigid. They don't have really good UX interfaces to deal with in a very open way. So what I see from this platform is finally GitLab has delivered a workflow API that's a little bit more open-ended than traditional RESTful interfaces that we ever had in the past. And when I look at that agent catalog, so I did browse through to see what was available. Those are common things that we've seen common people do with very flexible APIs. But the part that's interesting is the ones where I get to build them myself. And those are the ones that when people say, what's my job going to be in the world of AI and agents? It's all the things that the provider can't do, shouldn't do, because you can do it better. So that's the part that stands out on me. So look, A+, good job for what you all are building. But I don't want anyone to look at this and say the agent's going to do everything. That's artificial intelligence. Real intelligence, when you combine the two, then you get the superpowers.
Thanks for doing my job for me, Kelsey. I appreciate it.
No, it's honest. I'm not stealing anything. They didn't pay me to say anything. I literally looked at it, and that's my general takeaway, is that's the fundamental shift. I know everyone, oh, AI. No, the fundamental shift is that you have this open-ended API. So please allow your imagination to stretch beyond the docs or the prompts. That's when it's going to open up to things we haven't even talked about yet.
And many times also, like, out of the box AI agents, sometimes it doesn't work for the customer. They want to optimize it for themselves. They want to use it for their own organizations, own rules, and everything else. So I absolutely agree with you. And thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I think it just empowers so many people. It empowers more than engineers. You have directors saying, hey, I need an agent that does this and workflow. It's just opened the door up for so many opportunities. So it's really exciting that we have all the different roles involved in the software development lifecycle now, much more inclusive than just the engineers, which I do love them, but still much more inclusive.
You know, one thing I've seen in the enterprise, you're getting less of those one-off requests. Like, could you run a report on the number of repositories we have up? It's like, if you don't just go over here and ask that yourself, because you ain't even got to write SQL no more. You ain't got to learn a dashboard API. Right. Do that so I can keep working and stay in my flow. I see that as a net win, no matter what people say about where we are in terms of maturity of LLMs. But that part where I can offload simple questions to another thing, A+.
Yeah.
I really love that. I will open the floor if anyone has any last topics, and then I have a little announcement about our event that's coming up.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of more. Like, I would love to share a little bit more about the GA, because the Transcend is coming, and there's so many fun features that I really, really get excited talking to customers, and I'm hearing a lot of excitements, right? First of all, there's going to be free credits with Premium and Ultimate. So if you're a Premium and Ultimate customer, go ahead and start using it. And what I like about it is, we talked about it earlier, like, you have all that data. It's a unified data platform. It's built natively into Duo Agent Platform. So you can ask questions about your code base, your CI/CD
milestones.
Who is working on what? Like, who should I assign it to? Like, there's so many questions that I just sometimes, wow, like, you can ask that question so easily. Like, you save so much time just doing like a lot of research. It works out of the box, which is so great. But again, fixed failed pipelines is one of those things that, I mean, I have gray hair. I don't know if you see it, but you see, I mean, because like, there's
from
so
broken CI pipelines. Ebru, can you say that in a sentence so I can clip it out?
Like, we just like showed some gray hair. I don't know. It's like, it's so complicated, right? Sometimes it's that kind of a boost to like, hey, it's your environment variable. It's your YAML configuration. Oh no, somebody else changed this configuration. Now it's messing it up. Like, there's so much data involved. So a little bit of boost to help out engineers to understand the context better, so that you can actually point, instead of like troubleshooting hours and hours. Security analyst agent. Oh my gosh. Like, think about it. You have 300 vulnerabilities. NX package exploit happen. Log4j is, everybody knows about it, right? What are you going to do in this 0-day response? You're going to go ahead, like, it's super stressful, high stressful situation, right? You got to figure it out. You understand like blast radius, what's going on. You need to figure out all the dependencies, and you need to figure out like false positives, which is like, oh, is it actually, should I fix this now? Or it's false positive that it's not going to be exploited. I think security analyst AI agent and all these like agents like really, really help engineers to actually focus on what matters the most, which is their own customers, right? And pushing secure code faster. And I'm just like, I'm excited about this GA, Fatma.
All right, I think I'll say something so that we can give Kelsey the last word.
Okay.
I really like what Kelsey said, and I believe in this totally, and that is human intelligence plus computer intelligence is the superpower. So what I want people to do is invest in both. Spend the time to learn these features as they're rapidly coming out. Give yourself the space to do that, but also learn the soft skills that you need to engage with these products. That's it. Thanks.
That's a great cue for
Love
Kelsey.
it.
I'm not adding anything to that. I think the product speaks for itself, and I'm glad that we had all of this intelligence on us on the call with us today. So hopefully y'all have learned something. Go back and watch it. I think I will actually. There's a few snippets. I think I have to kind of. I'm tuning my own model around all of this stuff. So I think you said, well, we're gonna leave the summary there.
The Be
I
a
really
Goldfish
love
is
that.
the one that maybe you can.
Pipelines have been giving me gray hairs for years. Spaghetti. Spaghetti is my number one takeaway. Do you know what spaghetti is before you go to the store? Thank you so much, everyone. This was like a really great panel. I've personally been a little off sick this week and I was a little nervous about this, but you are all so talented. So thank you so much for sharing your insights and coming together for this. I know our audience is always a huge fan of all three of you. So hopefully we could do this again.
Thank you for having me. I'm really, really honored. Like Kelsey, I was telling like on LinkedIn, like my husband is a big fan. Like I'm just gonna brag about this for in the household. I told him and I was like, oh, cool. Okay. So Darva, I'm a big fan internally as well. Fatma, same way. So appreciate it. I'm honored to be here.
I'd like to say thanks for inviting me to the panel. I love talking AI and learning from others about AI and what's going on out there. And I love talking to the people and hearing what the people are thinking. I love that aspect of this program. Kelsey?
Also, I'm round 2. I'm looking for round 3.
Booked. As we wrap up, I want to tell our audience about GitLab Transcend, which is our virtual event happening on February 10th, 2026. You'll get to see a sneak peek of a demo that my team and I recorded in studio in Oakland that uses our AI agents in a multiplayer workflow. So looking forward to showing that to all of you on February 10th. Transcend is focused on agentic AI in software development. So we're thinking more about going beyond individual code completion or chat interfaces and showing you how you can use AI agents across the entire software delivery lifecycle, from planning to deployment and operations, and really taking advantage of what Ebru and Kelsey and Darva were saying about the context that you get with GitLab as your platform. So registration is free. We'll drop a link to the event into the chats wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us today. I will also rewatch this because I think we had a lot of great snippets in there, and hopefully we'll have a round 3 with these all-stars. Check out the GitLab 18.8 release to explore the Duo Agent Platform general availability, and we will see you next month for the development.